Welcome to episode 196 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. It is May 15, 1974. Largs, on the Firth of Clyde. Scotland have just beaten Wales 2-0 at Hampden Park. The World Cup is a few weeks away, and the players are allowed a few hours off. And then Jinky Johnstone, one of the greatest wingers Scotland has ever produced, climbs into a rowing boat. A teammate gives the boat a push, and the tide does the rest. There are no usable oars, or no rowlocks to use them properly. Either way, Jinky cannot row back, and soon Scotland's World Cup winger is drifting out toward deeper water, and the coastguard has to be called. This is the Largs boat incident. Funny, dangerous, deeply 1970s, and somehow only a prelude, because 3 days later, Johnstone walks out at Hampden and orchestrates Scotland's 2-0 beating of England. So how did we get here? We start with Scotland in 1974. This is a serious team. Willie Ormond has taken Scotland back to the World Cup for the first time since 1958. Qualification came through a tight group with Denmark and Czechoslovakia. Scotland hammered Denmark 4-1 away, and then at Hampden in September 1973, came from behind to beat Czechoslovakia 2-1. Jim Holton equalized. Joe Jordan scored the winner. Almost 96,000 people were there. Scotland were going to West Germany. England were not, and that matters. England's failure to qualify for 1974 after the famous 1-1 draw with Poland at Wembley and Jan Tomaszewski's night of defiance in the Polish goal changed the mood of British football. Scotland were heading to the World Cup. England were watching. So the 1973-74 British Home Championship became more of a mini-tournament. It was Scotland's send-off. On May 14, Scotland beat Wales 2-0 at Hampden. Kenny Dalglish scored. Sandy Jardine added a penalty. On May 18, Scotland would host England. In between, the squad were based in Largs, around 33 miles from Glasgow, at the Queen's Hotel. It sounds modest now, but the players liked it. It was homely. It gave them space. And it placed them in that very British football culture of the era. Hard training, hard matches, and then, when permission was given, a few drinks. And this is where Jinky enters. Jimmy Johnstone was small, red-haired, fearless, elusive, a winger who seemed to dribble in riddles. At Celtic, he was already legend, a Lisbon Lion, European Cup winner in 1967, part of the club's 9-in-a-row Scottish title run. In 1967, he finished third in the Ballon d'Or voting. In 2002, Celtic supporters voted him their greatest player ever. But for Scotland, his international career was strangely thin, only 23 caps. He was too brilliant to ignore, yet somehow never fully trusted, never fully built around. And that tension follows this story. Because after the Wales match, Johnstone and some teammates go out. The group includes Sandy Jardine of Rangers, Eric Shadler of Hibs, and David Hay, formerly of Celtic and now with Chelsea. They have a few drinks. They return toward the hotel along the seafront. They see a rowing boat, and Jinky climbs in. Sandy Jardine later jokes that he gave the boat a push and was, quote, doing his bit for Rangers, unquote. The joke is funny because of who they are. Celtic's Jinky, Rangers' Jardine, Scotland teammates, club rivalry turned dressing room mischief. But then the joke becomes real. The boat moves out. The tide carries it. The players realize Johnstone cannot get back. Some accounts say that there are no oars. Others say the problem is no rowlocks to hold the oars. Either way, Jinky is adrift. There's an attempt at rescue. Another boat is found. Davy Hay and Eric Shadler try to go after him. That boat leaks, though, so they have to turn back. So now the Coast Guard is involved. And that changes everything. This is not just boys being boys. This is Scotland's World Cup camp, a national team player out on the water needing rescue in the middle of the night. The press love it. The SFA do not. The Largs boat incident becomes a sensation. And so what did it mean? Astonishingly, it didn't stop Jinky, because 3 days later, Scotland play England at Hampden, and Johnstone is brilliant. Scotland win 2-0. Both goals are England own goals, Mike Pettit and Colin Todd. But the match is remembered for Scotland's pace, threat, and superiority. Johnstone runs England ragged. Emlyn Hughes later says he was embarrassed to come off the pitch and that Jimmy Johnstone had absolutely crucified him. And that is the absurd beauty of the story. because one day Jinky is being rescued by the coastguard, and a few days later he's tormenting England. But the consequences did follow. Johnstone was disciplined. He was selected for the World Cup squad, but he didn't play a single minute in West Germany. Whether that was pure selection, distrust, punishment, or all of those mixed together, the result was the same. Scotland went unbeaten in the tournament. They beat Zaire, drew with Brazil and drew with Yugoslavia, and still went out on goal difference. Jinky watched from the bench. That is one of the sad little football what-ifs. Would he have changed anything? Maybe not. But when a side exits unbeaten, every unused weapon becomes a question. For Johnstone, the story after 1974 is not simple. He left Celtic in 75, then moved through short spells at San Jose Earthquakes, Sheffield United, Dundee, Shelbourne, and Elgin City. His post-playing life included a serious battle with alcohol. Later came motor neuron disease. He passed in March 2006, aged 61. And yet the memory remains warm because the football was so alive. Jinky was mischief, genius, vulnerability, and joy in one body. The Lark's boat incident sits inside it, not as the whole man, but as a very Jinky episode, reckless, funny, dangerous, and somehow followed by brilliance. It also belongs to a wider culture that has changed. In 1970s British football, alcohol was everywhere. Players drank. Managers sometimes tolerated it, sometimes joined the social world around it, and sometimes fought it. Supporters drank heavily. George Best became the most famous warning sign of genius and alcohol intertwined. But he was not alone in belonging to a game where drink was both social glue and silent damage. Scotland had more incidents. In 1975, after a European Championship qualifier in Denmark, several players were caught up in a Copenhagen nightclub incident. In 1990, Maurice Johnstone and Jim Bett broke a curfew before the World Cup. Different cases, different seriousness, same recurring theme. Scotland, tournaments, pressure, booze, and headlines. The fan culture changed too. After the 1980 Scottish Cup final riot between Celtic and Rangers, alcohol restrictions in Scottish football became part of the legal and cultural landscape. In England and Wales, the 1985 Sporting Events Act helped lock alcohol away from the view of the pitch. Hooliganism, policing, all-seater stadiums, safety regulation, television, nutrition, sports science, all of it pulled elite football away from the world in which a national team player could drift into the Clyde and still start against England. Would it happen now? Not like that. A modern World Cup camp is controlled with security, media, phones, GPS, nutrition, recovery, safeguarding, reputation management. The head coach would not simply send players into town for a few drinks two days before England. But alcohol has not left football. It has moved. It is still in the fan journey, in sponsor culture, in pop culture, in national team travel. Scotland's return to the World Cup in 2026 is already a tartan army story as much as a football story. Travel plans, bars, songs, kilts, and the old hope that everyone gets home safely. And that's the real lesson of Larks. The game grew up, but not because it stopped being human. Before we go, 3 things to take away from May 15, 1974. First, the Larks boat incident was funny only because it ended safely. Johnstone really did need the coastguard. And second, Jinky's response was pure football genius. 3 days later, he helped Scotland beat England 2-0 and delivered one of his great Scotland performances. And third, the episode belongs to a vanished football culture. Looser, drunker, less managed, more dangerous. Before sports science, media control, and safety law changed what elite football could tolerate. On this day in 1974, Jimmy Johnstone drifted out from Larks in a rowing boat, was rescued by the Coast Guard, and turned a Scotland World Cup camp into one of football's strangest pre-tournament legends. That's all for episode 196 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. Tomorrow, we go to May 16, 1968, and to the beginning of Estudiantes Copa Libertadores dynasty. See you tomorrow.